Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I'm your host, G1. As always, I hope you're having a good week. It's been a slow one for me. Not a lot going on. I'm still kind of in a holding pattern with a couple of job prospects that I have kind of in the works, but fingers crossed that at least one of those will work out for me. We had some fun international things happening over the last week. As I was posting my show last Friday, President Trump was taking Zelensky to the woodshed in front of the entire world. In an example of brazen stupidity that we've not seen in ages, Zelensky picked a fight with Trump during a presser and brought down the wrath of both Trump and J.D. Vance. It was an eyebrow raising and funny, and honestly, when you think in the deeper context of it, a sad event all rolled into one. So why in the world did he do this? Well, I've spoken before about Zelensky being a man with very little time left. As long as he stays in office, he is protected. And he's on the receiving end of money, and he wields a little bit of power, a little bit of sway. And in order to maintain that, he has to continue to be useful. Once he's kind of run his course, and make no mistake, he has run his course. Once he reaches that point, he's out of office. Now, don't mistake this as some kind of desire for power. I don't think for one second that Zelensky is a traditional politician. One of these people that just craves power for the sake of power. That's not what motivates him. And in fact, I would speculate that he was motivated by a lot of different things, but a level of patriotism. I'll give him that benefit of the doubt. But he's an actor, okay, and he craves attention. His problem now is that once he's out of power, he's a dead man. So he's fighting for his life here. He knows far too much, and he's angered the Russians, and I think he's angered the globalists. And there's almost no place he's going to be safe. He most likely has two options, as I see it. I could be wrong about this, but I think these are his two best options. One is to lean heavy into his actor chops and to kind of try to head into Hollywood and become just completely undangerous, okay? Take on just stupid bit parts and lean into that acting side of it. Try to stay out of politics. Stay out of the spotlight and display how irrelevant that he has become. So he's no longer a threat, basically. His second option would be to lean into his Jewish heritage and run straight to Israel, seeking refuge there, and just basically lean on the mercies of Netanyahu's administration to watch out for him and take care of him. I'm not sure that either of those options are completely secure and will secure his safety, but I think that's all he's got. This man cannot afford for the war to end until he has solved that riddle, until he's figured out exactly what he's going to do. I think he's simply trying to redeem himself to the globalist so they will take some pity on him and leave him alone post-conflict. I don't think that he has any way of securing himself from the Russians, but he might be able to win back some favor from the globalist. Either way, he made a complete fool of himself in the Oval Office, and even the most ardent Trump haters on CNN had to shrug that off and just admit that, hey, Trump was giving him the best option there. All he had to do was keep his mouth shut, smile for the camera, signed that mineral rights deal that Trump had put on the table, everything would have been fine. But he didn't do that. Now, I want to pivot to another aspect of this topic that is kind of the focus of the show today, and that is why the globalists are so hell-bent on sustaining the war in Ukraine. Now, Concerned American over on the WRSA main page, hosted by the Cold Fury blog every day. If you're not reading it, you should be. CA has linked to a Substack piece that you should go read. It's the thumbnail of the video today, so check it out. It's a little long, but it's worth the effort, because I don't think I've seen anyone really lay it all kind of down in a single space as well as that. There have been others that have kind of hinted or touched on little aspects of it, but this is kind of everything condensed into one place. So it's a really good summary of the whole. There are some parts that are probably missing and probably not taken account for in that, I think, but still, it's a great summary of things. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. There's something that is absolutely critical to this whole situation that is mentioned in this piece, but it's not gone into great detail. But I think it's far more important than is let on in this piece, and maybe that was intentional. It is a little bit of a side trick, but I think it gets to the heart of really what is going on here. And that is the ancient empire that once sat in the area, the space that is now Ukraine. That being the Khazar Empire. Now, it was not a hugely great empire, at least by the standards of the term that we use, but it did have power. And it was sitting astride some key trade routes from Europe to Asia, and basically for a good while they got rich off of all that trade via, above board ways like, tariff, taxes, whatever, as well as below board ways like just outright robbery of people making the journey. And eventually this empire really made such a problem of itself that the Rus, who were a Viking-like people, and they would eventually become what we know as the Russians, well, they got fed up with these people, and they launched an invasion that defeated the various groups that made up this Khazar Empire kind of in detail, and put an end to it. And when this happened, many of the survivors were scattered and migrated west into various parts of Eastern Europe, like Poland. And that area pretty much became, from that point forward, a part of a larger Russian, or again, what would become the Russians, a larger part of their country from that point on. Now, I'm really simplifying this history here. It's more complex than that, and kind of strung out over a longer period of time here. But that's more than I can condense into a single paragraph, if you will, or single little bit. So if you want to know more about that history, go check it out online. It's an interesting piece. We in the West often that side of the eastern side of Europe, that history through what we call the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance is really something that largely gets overshadowed, and we don't really read very much about it and don't really know very much about it. But it's these things that continue to play a pretty critical part in what is going on today. Because that dispersion of people, for example, didn't go over so well with them, okay? In fact, you could say that they never forgot it, okay? And not only do we see it influencing some things like the Crusades of the Teutonic Knights. The Teutonic Knights, they didn't go crusading in the Holy Land, at least, after like that first crusade, several of them. They focused to the east and started going up into the Baltic states, those areas. So it was a few hundred years later, but very much, I believe, that event influenced the work of the Teutonic Knights, and then later on, continuing to today, this is playing a major role in the war in Ukraine. It played a big part of the role in World War II, going into Russia. I think this is that source of the ethnic hatred and distrust that people have for the Russians, at least in that area of Europe. And that's what's mentioned in the Substack piece. It's why many of our elites just have this pathological hatred for Russians and this unwavering desire to kill as many of them as they can. And this is also tied into the larger Zionist movement, because many of the Khazars were converted Jews or they were ethnic Jews. They weren't all, but many of them were. These became sort of these, the pockets of Jewish area, in Eastern Europe. That's where they came from. So this is seen as this continuation of the restoration of the Holy Land that so dominates Jewish social and political power. And I know I'm touching a third rail here, but settle down. There's plenty of blame to go around for everybody, okay? Moving away from some of the motivations now, let's kind of shift into allegiances that the article hits on. If Ukraine is part of a larger Zionist as well as globalist plan, then why have we seen a shift in backing from the tech bros, from that globalist faction? Many of them are Jewish and possibly Zionist. I'm sure some of them are. So why are they shifting from that globalist elite to the Trump faction, who is, avowed anti-Ukraine and more nationalistic? Trump's not a globalist. Well, that gets into something I've been talking about for some time, but I've never fully delivered on it. Okay, I've promised a program on this, and I've just kind of struggled with a way to really wrap all of this into something that is interesting and really cohesive way of putting it together. But I've kind of just decided to break this up a little bit. This is a theory that I have. I don't really have a name for it so much as elemental people. Let me kind of expound on that a little bit. If you read a little bit of Alexander Dugin, the Russian philosopher that is favored by Putin, he references what he calls earth people and sea people. And he puts the Russians in the camp of earth people. And these are people that are tied to their lands, and they're intertwined, their heritage and their ancestral soil are intrinsically linked. They're known for agriculture and their mineral wealth, and so they build their whole culture, their whole way of thinking around the land. And then he talks about sea people, and he pretty much puts most of the West into the category of sea people. And these are people that are not tied to any land. They're merchants. They're tied to the sea. This vast sailing sort of merchant fleet kind of empires that are built on trade and colonization, and he throws in the kind of obligatory exploitation and piracy, those kind of aspects of it that are really pretty well linked with life on the sea. And he says these are people who are shifting like the tides, and their loyalty is shifting. And this is where he puts the globalists, because that is what we see, a globalist trade kind of mentality that comes with the sea people. And I think he's pretty spot on with this assertion. I think this goes back well into deep history, and I'll get into that at another time. But I want to add two more people to this. And this is part of my theory, or my extension of that theory, and that is first the people of the air. These are people who are separated and kind of above everything. They're virtual and looking to the heavens. They have no ties to earth at all, to terrain or land. They're not concerned with that. They don't care about soil or the sea. So they don't care about land or trade. They care about energy and dynamic movement. I put Trump and Musk into this category, and I notice I mentioned virtual. Well, who is more virtual than the tech bros? To them, their nation is a virtual one, and they can be anywhere physically, but with a simple over-the-air connection, they're together in a community, widely dispersed and widely separated, but right there at the click of a button. They have their own cultures, their own languages. They have their own means of commerce. Think of the rise of digital currency. Digital commerce, period. So this is a people that have only really in the last 100 years or so become possible. So it is an emerging breakaway civilization. And I believe that much of the conflict from the last 100 years has been centered around the emergence of these people. And the other two powers, the other two types of people, kind of coming to grips with that shifting of power. Now, the last group of people are a little bit different. And they are linked to all of the others. They cannot exist without them, because they're meaningless unless they are interacting with the other factions or the other peoples. These are the fire people. Just as fire can be useful, it can also be destructive. And these people are exactly that. They can be your ally and help you, but if you let them get out of control, they will burn you down and not have a single bit of remorse for it. They are self-destructive, dynamic, and vibrant. But they are the source of all kinds of problems. Fire people are the people who control the energy of the world, and they convert that energy into what we call money. And they control that money and how it flows. This is their sole reason for existing. And while they may not even understand it themselves, this is the destiny that they fill. For much of the last 100 years, the fire people have supported the causes of the sea people and the land people where it suited them. And now, I think they see this emergence of the air people and how they have become a fully visible and viable power, and so they are shifting their support for them. Now, some people are going to leap to some conclusions about this classification, and that's fine. Some people may think it's very silly, but I think it works. And I think, again, I'll get into in another episode the deeper historical backing behind all of this. But I do want to assure you of something. I use these labels as a general classification of philosophy. Okay, it's not meant to brand someone as something that they cannot ever change or alter. Okay, I think these are states of mind, and people have the power over themselves to change that if they choose to do so. In fact, that is what has happened over the last 100 years. I mean, I think, if you just look at the emergence of air power, or the idea of air, traveling by air and existing in the air, those things came about and were thought of by people who lived on the land or lived on the sea. So the idea that you can't change, you're forever linked into one of these things is just not the case. You're not permanently in one of these mental states. And I want to point out something about the fire people. Fire exists because we allow it to exist. We more often than not keep it contained and make use out of it. And we're not the servants of fire. Fire is our servant. And the fire people are no different. Okay, they exist because they are always going to exist. And they're allowed to do the work. if they become a problem or they begin to show signs of getting out of control or becoming the master, if you will, well, each of these other people have the ability and have in the past stamped them out, at least for a while, until they needed them again. This is a symbiotic relationship. Now, like I said, in the future, I'll do a whole show about this and the history, as well as kind of breaking down each of these groups into, well, three factions, really. I call it people, priests, and princes, but I'll get into that in another episode. But I do want to mention a couple of other things that you should go watch. First is the Joe Rogan podcast with Ian Carroll, which was on just the other day, and now is available on the different outlets that Joe Rogan posts to. Go watch that. There's some really interesting stuff in that. I'm going to finish watching it today. Second is the Tucker Carlson show about the goings-on in South Africa. Go watch that one as well. Fascinating program. I watched that the other night. No one else in the mainstream is talking about these things, so go check them out. Even if it's just to tick the algorithm to give those guys their due on the platforms. Anyway, that is all I have for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and the Cold Fury blog. And I will see you on the next episode.